What if the very thing you have been seeking your entire life is already here, in this moment, waiting not to be found but to be recognized? What if awakening is not something that happens to you in some distant future, but something that is available right now, in the simple act of accepting what is? Feel the aliveness in your body as these words reach you. Notice the breath moving in and out without your direction. Sense the space around you, the stillness that holds all movement. This is not preparation for awakening. This is awakening itself, arising naturally when resistance to this moment dissolves. The mind will tell you that this moment is not enough, that something more significant needs to happen. It will say that awakening requires years of practice, special conditions, or extraordinary experiences. But awakening begins the moment you stop seeking it somewhere else and recognize the profound simplicity of what is already present. Take one conscious breath now. In this breathing, notice how life lives itself through you. You are not making the breath happen. You are not controlling the beating of your heart or the countless processes occurring in your body this very second. There is an intelligence at work that transcends the small self, the thinking mind that believes it is running the show. This intelligence is what you are, not the thoughts about yourself, not the stories of past and future, but the aware presence in which all experience arises and dissolves. When you truly accept this moment, not just intellectually but with your whole being, you step out of psychological time and into the timeless dimension that is your true nature. The word accept points to something much deeper than passive resignation. It points to an active alignment with the intelligence of life itself. When you accept this moment completely, you are not giving up, you are accessing a power that the mind in its constant resistance cannot touch. Right now, as you hear these words, there is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do, no other state of consciousness you need to achieve. The very seeking that has driven your spiritual journey can rest. Not because you have found what you were looking for, but because you recognize that what you were seeking was never absent. Feel the quality of presence that emerges when seeking stops. It is not empty or void, it is vibrantly alive, pregnant with possibility, yet complete in itself. This is the ground of being, the source from which all experience emerges and to which it returns. Notice how the mind wants to categorize this experience, to compare it with past moments of peace or project it into future attainment. See how quickly it moves away from the immediacy of now into the realm of memory and anticipation. This movement away from the present moment is what creates the sense of separation, the feeling that you are somehow cut off from life, from love, from your own essential nature. But you cannot actually leave this moment. Where would you go? The past exists only as present thoughts about what seems to have happened. The future exists only as present thoughts about what might happen. Both past and future are mental constructs arising in the only time there is, now. When this becomes more than an intellectual understanding, when it becomes a felt realization, something profound shifts. The desperate seeking for fulfillment in time ends. The chronic dissatisfaction that drives most human activity begins to dissolve. You discover that what you have been looking for has been looking through your eyes all along. Can you sense the space in which these words are appearing? Not just the physical space around you, but the aware space in which all experience arises. This space is not separate from you. You are this space. You are the consciousness in which thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions come and go like clouds in an empty sky. The clouds are not the sky. The weather is not the sky. The sky remains unaffected by whatever appears within it. In the same way, you remain unaffected by whatever appears in the field of your awareness. Thoughts cannot touch what you are. Emotions cannot diminish your essential nature. Even the deepest pain cannot damage the aware presence that you are. This recognition is not something you achieve through effort. It is something you relax into when the effort to become someone or something else finally ceases. It is what remains when the story of yourself as a limited, time-bound entity loses its compelling power. The mind has created an elaborate structure of psychological time to maintain the illusion of separateness. It takes experiences from the past and uses them to create an identity. I am someone who has suffered. I am someone who has achieved. I am someone who needs to become better. It then projects this constructed self into an imagined future where fulfillment awaits. This movement between past and future creates what appears to be a continuous story of a me moving through time. But when you look closely, when you bring gentle attention to this process, you discover that there is no solid me to be found. There are only present moment experiences arising in awareness. The past is not actually behind you somewhere. It exists only as present memories. The future is not actually ahead of you somewhere. It exists only as present thoughts and projections. The psychological time that seems so real, so substantive, is revealed to be nothing more than mental activity happening now. This does not mean that practical time, clock time, is an illusion. You still catch buses, keep appointments, plan for tomorrow's activities, but you no longer live in psychological time. You no longer derive your sense of identity from past experiences or pin your hopes on future attainment. When psychological time collapses, something extraordinary happens. The chronic anxiety about the future dissolves. The regret and resentment about the past fade away. What remains is a profound sense of completeness, of being exactly where you need to be, experiencing exactly what needs to be experienced. This is not a temporary high or a peak experience that comes and goes. It is the recognition of what has always been true. You have never actually been anywhere else but here, never existed in any time but now. The seeking, the suffering, the sense of separation, all of it has been a kind of cosmic dream, a play of consciousness that never actually touched your essential nature. Take another conscious breath. Feel how this breathing happens in the eternal now. Notice that even as you breathe, you are not really doing the breathing. Life is breathing itself through the form that appears to be you. In this recognition, the boundaries between inner and outer, self and other, begin to soften. The word acceptance carries tremendous power, but it is often misunderstood. The mind interprets acceptance as a kind of defeated resignation. I guess I have to put up with this situation. But true acceptance is something entirely different. It is the recognition that this moment, exactly as it is the only reality. True acceptance is not passive. It is not about becoming a doormat or never taking action to change circumstances. It is about aligning yourself with the intelligence of the present moment rather than fighting against it. When you are fully present, when you have stopped resisting what is, action arises from a completely different place. Instead of action driven by fear, lack, or the desperate need to escape this moment, action flows from presence itself. This kind of action is effortless because it is aligned with what wants to emerge. It is effective because it comes from clarity rather than reactivity. It is peaceful because it does not carry the burden of personal agenda. Notice how much energy is consumed by resistance to what is. Notice the subtle tension that arises when you want this moment to be different from what it is. This resistance creates a constant state of internal conflict. Part of you is here, but part of you is fighting to be somewhere else, sometime else, someone else. When resistance dissolves, that energy becomes available for presence. Instead of being scattered across time, worrying about the past and future, your attention gathers into the fullness of now. In this gathering, you discover resources you never knew you had: clarity, peace, love, creativity, wisdom. These are not qualities you need to develop or acquire. They are the natural expressions of your essential nature when it is no longer obscured by the movement of psychological time. They arise spontaneously when the mind's compulsive activities settle into stillness. What you call problems exist only in psychological time. In the present moment, there is what is. and your response to what is. There is never a problem, only a situation that either requires action or requires acceptance. When you are fully present, you know immediately which response is called for. The chronic worry, the endless mental elaboration of difficulties, the spinning stories about how things should be different, all of this dissolves in the immediacy of now. What remains is a clarity so obvious, so simple, that the mind cannot grasp it. The mind is designed to deal with complexity, with problems that exist in time. It cannot comprehend the profound simplicity of presence. This simplicity is not simple-minded. It is the simplicity that lies on the other side of complexity. It is what remains when all the unnecessary mental activity falls away. It is the eye of the storm, the center that remains still while everything else moves around it. Feel into this stillness now, not the absence of movement, but the presence that allows all movement. Not the absence of sound, but the silence from which all sound emerges and into which it returns. This stillness is not empty. It is full of potential, full of life, full of the peace that passes understanding. In this stillness, acceptance becomes natural. You no longer need to fight against life because you recognize that you are life. You no longer need to protect yourself from what is because you realize there is no separate self to protect. What you are is vast enough to contain all experience, open enough to allow whatever arises. This is the beginning of true freedom, not freedom from life, but freedom as life itself, expressing itself through the unique form that appears to be you while never being limited by that form. This is the awakening that starts when you accept this very second, completely and without reservation. Yet even as this recognition dawns, notice how something within you begins to resist. There is a voice that says, "Yes, but what about my problems? What about the things I need to accomplish? What about my future?" This voice is not wrong or bad. It is the voice of what has been called the ego, the mind-made sense of self that has learned to survive by maintaining separation from the present moment. The ego cannot exist in presence. It is like a shadow that disappears when you turn toward the light. Its very existence depends on the illusion of psychological time, on the story of past and future, on the belief that you are a separate entity moving through life rather than law, and if itself expressing through a temporary form. Watch how quickly the mind creates a problem to solve, a goal to achieve, a future state to attain. This is all very nice, it says, but I need to get back to real life. But what is more real than this moment? What is more substantial than this direct experience of being aware, being alive, being here? The ego's survival strategy is remarkably sophisticated. It cannot argue against presence directly. The truth of this moment is too obvious. Instead, it creates urgency about something that exists only in psychological time. It generates worry about a future event or rehashes a past experience. It whispers that you are wasting time, that you should be doing something more productive. Notice this subtle pull away from now. Feel how it creates a sense of contraction, of anxiety, of incompleteness. This is not your fault. This is simply how the conditioned mind has learned to operate. For most of human history, this mental mechanism served a protective function. But in the modern world, it has become the source of most suffering. The ego maintains itself through constant becoming. When I get that job, I will be happy. When I lose this weight, I will be confident. When I find the right relationship, I will be complete. There is always a gap between what is and what should be, and in this gap, the ego finds its home. But you are not the ego. You are the awareness in which the ego appears. You are the space in which all these thoughts and desires arise and dissolve. When you rest in this awareness, the ego does not disappear. It simply loses its compelling power over you. It becomes like a radio playing in another room, audible but not demanding your attention. The pain body, that accumulation of old emotional pain that lives in every human being, is particularly resistant to presence. It feeds on drama, on conflict, on the recycling of old wounds. It has an appetite for suffering and will create problems to maintain its existence. But pain body can only survive in psychological time, in the rehashing of past hurts or the projection of future fears. When you are truly present, when you have fully accepted this moment, the pain body has nothing to feed on. It begins to dissolve in the light of awareness, not through fighting it, but through the simple act of being present with whatever arises without getting lost in the story of it. This dissolution is not dramatic. It happens quietly, naturally, like ice melting in the warmth of spring. You may not even notice it happening until you realize that the familiar weight of old resentments, the chronic anxiety about the future, the sense of being a victim of circumstances, all of this has simply faded away. In this fading, something else emerges, not a new experience to be grasped, but the recognition of what has always been present. It is like clouds parting to reveal the sky that was never hidden. The sky does not appear, it is revealed. In the same way, your essential nature is not created through spiritual practice. It is uncovered when the layers of mental conditioning become transparent. Between each thought, there is a gap. Between each breath, there is a pause. Between each heartbeat, there is a space of stillness. Most people are so focused on the content of experience, the thoughts, the breathing, the heartbeat, that they never notice the space in which it all occurs. This space is not empty. It is pregnant with infinite possibility. It is the fertile void from which all experience emerges and to which it returns. When you begin to notice this space, you discover that it is not separate from you. You are this space. You are the conscious field in which all experience arises. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence that allows all movement. It is not the absence of sound. It is the silence from which all sound emerges. This stillness is available to you right now, not as something you need to achieve, but as something you can recognize. Take a moment to listen to the silence between these words. Feel the space around each thought. Notice the aware stillness that is reading these words, that is aware of whatever emotions or sensations are present. This stillness is not a state you enter, it is what you are. In this stillness, healing happens naturally, not healing as the removal of symptoms, but healing as the return to wholeness. When you rest in stillness, the chronic stress that comes from resistance begins to dissolve. The immune system relaxes. The nervous system finds its natural balance. The body remembers its inherent wisdom. But the deepest healing is not physical. It is the healing of the fundamental misunderstanding about what you are. In stillness, the belief that you are a separate, vulnerable entity begins to dissolve. You recognize yourself as the very consciousness in which the entire world appears. From this stillness, action arises that is completely different from action driven by fear or desire. It is action that flows from presence itself, requiring no effort, because it is aligned with what wants to emerge. It is creative action, loving action, intelligent action, not because you are trying to be creative or loving or intelligent, but because these are the natural expressions of your true nature. Most people are afraid of stillness because they confuse it with inaction or passivity. But true stillness is dynamically alive. It is the source of all genuine action. When you act from stillness, you are not acting from the limited perspective of the ego. You are acting from the infinite intelligence of life itself. Feel this stillness now as you breathe. Notice that the breath is happening by itself, without your effort or control. This involuntary breathing is one of the most profound teachers available to you. It shows you that life is living itself through you, that you are not the doer, but the space in which all doing occurs. Each breath is a bridge between the form world and the formless dimension. Each inhalation brings life force into the body. Each exhalation releases what is no longer needed. In conscious breathing, you participate directly in the fundamental rhythm of existence, receiving and releasing, expansion and contraction, being and becoming. When you bring full tension to the breath, something miraculous happens. The breath begins to breathe you rather than you breathing it. There is no longer a sense of someone directing the process. There is simply breathing happening in awareness, by awareness, as awareness. This conscious breathing has the power to dissolve mental turbulence immediately. When the mind is spinning with worry or planning or analyzing, 3 conscious breaths can bring you back to the simplicity of what is. The breath does not judge or evaluate, it simply is. In following the breath with your attention, you learn the art of being present with what is, without needing it to be different. Breathe into whatever resistance you feel right now. Perhaps there is resistance to slowing down, to being still, to accepting this moment as it is. Do not try to overcome the resistance. Simply breathe with it. Include it in your awareness without fighting it or feeding it with mental commentary. As you breathe with resistance, notice how it begins to soften, not because you are forcing it to change, but because resistance cannot maintain itself in the face of total acceptance. The breath teaches you this fundamental truth. What you resist persists, what you accept transforms. The breath is your constant companion on the journey of awakening. It is always available, always present, always calling you back to now. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot breathe in the future. You can only breathe now. Each conscious breath is a return to the timeless dimension of your being. When difficult emotions arise, breathe with them, rather than trying to escape them or fix them. Breathe with sadness, with anger, with fear, with joy. The breath creates space around whatever you are experiencing, allowing it to move through you without getting stuck, without becoming part of your identity. Feel how the breath moves through the entire body, not just into the lungs. Breathe into your heart space, into your belly, into any areas of tension or discomfort. The breath carries awareness wherever it goes, illuminating what has been unconscious, bringing presence to what has been abandoned. In this breathing, you discover that you are not a solid, fixed entity, but a dynamic flow of energy and consciousness. Each breath dissolves the boundaries between inner and outer, self and world. Each breath is a small death and rebirth, a letting go and a receiving, a surrender and an awakening. This is the breath of being itself, expressing through the form that appears to be you, while never being limited by that form. In conscious breathing, you remember what you have always known, but may have forgotten, that you are life itself, breathing itself into existence moment by moment by moment. Notice how naturally the ego's resistance begins to dissolve when you are fully present with the breath. The voice that was so insistent about problems and future goals becomes quieter, less compelling. It does not disappear entirely, it simply loses its hypnotic power over you. You begin to see it for what it is, a collection of conditioned thoughts and reactions arising in the vast pace of your awareness. This seeing is not analytical or judgmental. It is the gentle recognition that you are not the contents of your mind, but the awareness in which all mental content appears. The ego is like a character in a movie, and you have been so absorbed in the story that you forgot you are the screen on which the entire movie is playing. When you remember that you are the screen, the drama of the character no longer determines your state of being. You can watch the story unfold. The problems, the achievements, the relationships, the losses, without losing yourself in it. You participate fully in life while remaining anchored in the unchanging peace of your essential nature. The pain body, that emotional residue from past experiences, has a particular cunning. It can remain dormant for long periods, then suddenly activate when triggered by certain situations, or even by the simple practice of becoming present. It knows that presence is its death, so it will fight for survival by creating emotional drama, by pulling you back into old patterns of victimhood or blame or anger. When the pain body activates, the key is not to fight it, but to observe it with the same gentle attention you would give to a crying child. The pain body is, in essence, a part of you that learned to survive through suffering and has not yet realized that survival through suffering is no longer necessary. Breathe with whatever emotional turbulence arises. Do not try to think your way out of it or analyze why it is happening. Simply be present with the raw energy of emotion, without getting caught in the story that the mind creates around it. In this presence, the pain body begins to dissolve naturally, not through effort, but through the simple power of conscious awareness. The ego's final strategy is often the most subtle. It co-opts the very language of awakening and turns it into another project for the mind to pursue. It says, yes, I need to be more present. I need to practice acceptance. I need to become enlightened. But this is still the same old pattern of becoming, of seeking fulfillment in time, dressed up in spiritual language. True awakening is not something you achieve, it is something you are. It is not a future state of consciousness, but the recognition of what is timelessly present. The moment you make it into a goal to be reached, you have moved back into psychological time and lost the very thing you are seeking. This recognition can be humbling for the ego, which is accustomed to being the hero of its own story, but this humbling is actually a profound liberation. When the ego's grandiose projects collapse, what remains is the simple, immediate reality of being here, being aware, being alive. There is tremendous relief in no longer having to maintain the complex structure of the separate self. In this dissolution, you do not lose anything real. You only lose the illusion of separateness. What emerges is a sense of connectedness with all life, not as a concept, but as a lived reality. The birds singing outside are not separate from your being. The trees, the sky, other people, all of it Ari says within the same consciousness that you are. Feel this interconnectedness now. Sense how the life force that animates your body is the same life force that moves through all of nature. The intelligence that beats your heart is the same intelligence that spins the planets and grows the flowers and creates the intricate patterns of snowflakes. You are not a separate entity observing life from the outside. You are life observing itself from within. This recognition naturally leads to a profound stillness, not the stillness of death or inactivity, but the stillness of pure aliveness. It is the stillness of a mountain lake that perfectly reflects the sky, disturbed neither by the clouds that pass above nor by the fish that swim below. This stillness is your natural state, obscured only by the mental activity that constantly pulls your attention into past and future. In this stillness, you discover dimensions of yourself that thinking cannot reach. There is a knowing that transcends knowledge, a peace that surpasses understanding, a love that needs no object. These are not emotions or mental states, but qualities of your essential being, revealed when the surface turbulence of mind settles into its natural transparency. The thinking mind cannot understand stillness because stillness is what the mind arises from and dissolves back into. It is like asking a wave to understand the ocean. The wave can only know itself as wave until it realizes that it is ocean appearing as wave. In the same way, thoughts can only know themselves as thoughts until they recognize that they are consciousness appearing as thought. Rest in the stillness between thoughts. Notice that it is not empty or void, but vibrantly alive with potential. This is the creative source from which all thought, all emotion, all experience emerges. When you rest here consciously, you are not withdrawing from life, but touching its very source. From this stillness, when action is required, it flows effortlessly. There is no sense of strain or struggle because the action is arising from the intelligence of the whole rather than from the limited perspective of the separate self. This action is precise, appropriate, and effective because it is not distorted by personal agenda or emotional reactivity. In the workplace, in relationships, in all the practical affairs of daily life, this stillness becomes your foundation. You respond rather than react. You speak from presence rather than from conditioning. You make decisions from clarity rather than from fear or desire. Life becomes much simpler because you are no longer fighting against the current but flowing with it. This does not mean you become passive or indifferent. If anything, you become more responsive, more alive, more capable of appropriate action. But the action comes from love rather than from need, from wholeness rather than from lack, from presence rather than from the desperate attempt to escape the present moment. The breath continues to be your most intimate teacher in this process. Each breath is an invitation to return to stillness, to presence, to the timeless notion of your being. When you feel yourself getting caught in mental turbulence, when the ego reasserts its demands, when the pain body stirs to life, simply return to the breath. Breathing consciously is not a technique you apply from the outside. It is a recognition of what is already happening, a conscious participation in the fundamental rhythm of existence. The breath breathes itself. Your job is simply to be present with it, to allow it to anchor you in the reality of now. Watch how the breath naturally creates a bridge between the visible and invisible dimensions of your being. The physical act of breathing connects you to your body, to the material world. But the awareness of breathing connects you to the formless essence of who you are. In conscious breathing, form and formlessness meet and recognize themselves as one. The in-breath draws in not just air, but life itself, consciousness itself, the very substance of existence. The out-breath releases not just carbon dioxide, but all that is no longer needed, old thoughts, stale emotions, outdated patterns of being. Each breath is a complete cycle of receiving and releasing, of opening and letting go. Feel how this breathing happens without your doing. The body breathes itself, just as the heart beats itself, just as the cells regenerate themselves. You are not the doer of your life. You are the conscious witness of life expressing itself through the form that appears to be you. In this witnessing, a profound trust emerges. If life can handle the incredibly complex process of breathing, of circulation, of digestion, of cellular renewal without any conscious direction from you, perhaps it can also handle the affairs that the mind worries about so constantly. Perhaps the intelligence that runs your body is also capable of guiding your life in ways that the thinking mind cannot anticipate or control. This trust is not blind faith, but the natural result of recognizing the vast intelligence that operates through all of existence. When you align yourself with this intelligence through presence, through acceptance, through conscious breathing, your life begins to flow with an ease and grace that the struggling ego never knew was possible. Breathe into this trust now. Allow each breath to dissolve a little more of the tension that comes from trying to control life rather than flowing with it. Let the breath remind you that you are held by a love so vast, so intelligent, so present that nothing real can ever be threatened by the temporary storms that pass through the sky of your awareness. In this trust, in this breathing, in this moment of pure presence, healing begins. Not healing as the ego understands it, the removal of all discomfort, the perfection of circumstances, the elimination of all challenges. True healing is the recognition that you have never actually been broken. You have only believed yourself to be broken, and that belief itself was the source of your suffering. When you are fully present with whatever pain arises, physical, emotional, or psychological, something miraculous happens. The pain is no longer experienced as something happening to you, but as something arising within the vast space of your awareness. This shift in perspective changes everything. You are no longer the victim of your pain, but the conscious space in which pain can arise and dissolve. Feel into any discomfort present in your body right now. Instead of immediately wanting it to go away, instead of creating a story about what it means or how to fix it, simply be present with the raw sensation. Breathe into it, surround it with your awareness. Notice how the quality of the sensation begins to change when it is met with presence rather than resistance. This is not a technique for getting rid of pain. This is the recognition that you are large enough to hold whatever arises without being diminished by it. You are the space in which all experience occurs. Pain cannot damage space. Suffering cannot contaminate awareness. You remain untouched by whatever passes through the field of your being. The pain body, that accumulation of old emotional wounds, dissolves in this light of awareness like mist dissolving in the morning sun, not through fighting it or analyzing it, but through the simple act of being present with it without becoming it. When you no longer feed the pain body with mental commentary, with stories of victimhood or blame, it has nothing to sustain itself. Years of therapy, of trying to fix yourself, of attempting to heal old wounds through memory and analysis, all of this can be transcended in a moment of total presence. This does not mean that therapy or healing work is wrong or useless. It means that the deepest healing happens not in time, but in the timeless dimension of now. The body carries tremendous wisdom that becomes available when you stop imposing the mind's interpretations upon it. When you rest in stillness, when you accept this moment completely, the body's natural healing intelligence is activated. Chronic tension dissolves, stress-related symptoms fade. The immune system finds its natural balance. But more importantly, you discover that you are not your body any more than you are your thoughts. You are the consciousness that animates the body, that is aware of the body, that exists prior to the body's birth and will continue after the body's death. This recognition removes the fear that underlies most physical suffering, the fear of mortality, of vulnerability, of being a limited, fragile form. Feel the aliveness that permeates your body right now. This aliveness is not produced by the body. The body is produced by this aliveness. This life force that you can sense directly is what you are. It is indestructible because it was never created. It is eternal because it exists outside of time. When you rest in this aliveness, accepting whatever sensations arise within it, healing happens naturally. Not as an achievement or attainment, but as a return to your natural state of wholeness. The word health comes from the same root as whole. To be truly healthy is to recognize your essential wholeness, regardless of what appears to be happening on the surface level of form. This vichar. Wholeness includes everything, not just the experiences you like, but also those you would prefer to avoid. Pain, illness, aging, death, all of this is included in the greater wholeness of what you are. When you no longer resist these natural processes, when you accept them as expressions of the one life expressing itself through countless forms, they lose their power to create psychological suffering. The miracle is not that all pain disappears when you become present. The miracle is that you discover you are vast enough to contain all pain without being damaged by it. You are the space in which both pleasure and pain arise. You are the awareness that remains peaceful regardless of whether the content of experience is pleasant or unpleasant. Can you feel this vastness now? Can you sense that whatever you are experiencing, whether comfortable or uncomfortable, is arising within something much larger than itself? This larger dimension is what you are. It is not a concept or a belief, but a direct, immediate reality that can be felt right now. In this vastness, you begin to recognize that your entire personal history, all the experiences that seem to define you, all the wounds that seem to limit you, all the achievements that seem to fulfill you, all of it was simply weather, passing through the sky of your being. You are not the weather, you are the sky. The sky is never damaged by the storms that pass through it. Thunder cannot hurt space. Lightning cannot wound emptiness. In the same way, nothing that has ever happened to you has ever actually touched what you are. The traumas, the losses, the disappointments, all of it has been like clouds passing through an infinite sky. This does not mean that your experiences were not real or important. They were real on the level of form, and they shaped the character that you appear to be. But they never touched your essential nature. They never diminished the consciousness that you are. They never reduced the love that is your deepest reality. When you recognize this, when you feel it directly rather than just understanding it intellectually, a profound freedom emerges. You are no longer defined by your past. You are no longer limited by the stories you have told yourself about who you are. You are no longer bound by the patterns that seem so fixed and unchangeable. This freedom is not freedom from your history, but freedom within it. You can still remember what happened, but it no longer carries the emotional charge that once made it feel so significant. It becomes like a movie you once watched. Interesting perhaps, but not relevant to who you are right now in this moment. This is who you are beyond your personal history, pure consciousness, aware and alive, expressing itself through the temporary form that bears your name while never being limited by that form. This consciousness has no history because it exists outside of time. It has no problems because problems exist only in the realm of psychological time. In recognizing this timeless dimension of your being, something extraordinary happens in the most ordinary moments. Washing dishes becomes a sacred act. Walking down the street becomes a march. Meditation, listening to a friend becomes a communion with the divine. The extraordinary is revealed to be hiding in plain sight within the most mundane activities. This is how awakening actually happens, not in dramatic mystical experiences, but in the simple recognition that this moment exactly as it is already complete. The conversation you are having, the task you are performing, the sensation you are feeling, all of it is an expression of the one consciousness appearing as the many. When you bring total presence to whatever you are doing, the activity becomes secondary to the presence itself. Whether you are working, relating, playing, or resting, the real happening is the flowering of consciousness through form. You are not someone having experiences. You are experience itself, knowing itself, celebrating itself, expressing itself in infinite ways. In relationships, this presence transforms everything. Instead of relating from need, from fear, from the desire to get something, you relate from fullness, from love, from the joy of sharing what you are. The other person is no longer there to fulfill your needs or complete your story. They are recognized as another expression of the same consciousness that you are. This recognition dissolves the reactive patterns that create so much suffering in human relationships. The need to be right, the fear of abandonment, the compulsion to control or change the other person. All of this falls away when you are rooted in your essential completeness. You can love without attachment, give without depletion, receive without dependency. Presence is the greatest gift you can offer to another being, not your advice, not your analysis of their problems, not your attempts to fix or heal them. Simply your full presence, your complete acceptance of them as they are in this moment. In this acceptance, they feel seen, understood, and loved not for who they might become, but for who they are right now. Feel how this presence radiates naturally from your being when you are not trying to be someone or get somewhere. It is like the warmth of the sun, which shines not to achieve anything, but simply because that is its nature. Your presence blesses whoever encounters it, not through any effort on your part, but through the simple fact of your being present. When you live from this awakened awareness, you become a beneficial presence in the world without trying to be beneficial. Your very being has a healing effect on others because you are no longer adding to the collective unconsciousness, the collective resistance to what is. You become a space of peace in which others can remember their own essential nature. This awakening is not a destination you reach, but a deepening that never ends. Each moment offers a fresh opportunity to say yes to what is, to accept this second completely, to dissolve a little more deeply into the truth of your being. There is no graduation from this school of presence, no final attainment that makes further practice unnecessary. This is the beauty and the humility of the spiritual journey. The moment you think you have got it, you have moved back into the ego's domain of achievement and comparison. True awakening maintains a quality of not knowing, of wonder, of openness to the mystery that you are and that life is. Each moment arrives unprecedented and unrepeatable. Even if the external circumstances seem familiar, the quality of awareness, the depth of presence, the aliveness of this specific moment has never existed before and will never exist again. This makes every moment fresh, every breath a new beginning, every heartbeat an act of creation. The cosmic joke is that what you have been seeking so desperately has been with you all along. You have been looking for yourself with your own eyes, seeking your own being with your own consciousness, trying to find what you already are. The seeker is the sought, the lover is the beloved, the wave is the ocean. When this joke finally lands, when you really get it, there is tremendous laughter, not at the futility of seeking, but at the beautiful absurdity of it all. You have been looking everywhere for what was never lost. You have been trying to become what you have always been. You have been seeking to find what you could never be separate from. This laughter is not the end of the journey, but a deepening into its real purpose. You are not here to achieve enlightenment. You are here to be enlightenment, to be the light of consciousness expressing itself in form, to be the love that moves the sun and stars flowing through a human nervous system. And so this moment becomes an invitation, not an invitation to become someone other than who you are, but an invitation to be who you are completely, to accept this second fully, to breathe this breath consciously, to feel this aliveness directly, to recognize the extraordinary that is present in this very ordinary moment. There is nowhere to go because you are already here. There is nothing to achieve because you are already whole. There is nothing to become because you are already being. The awakening that you seek is the awakening that is already present, waiting not to be found, but to be acknowledged, not to be attained, but to be appreciated, not to be grasped, but to be lived. This is the invitation that is always present in every moment, in every breath, in every heartbeat. This is the awakening that starts when you accept this very second. This is the beginning that has no end, the journey that never really started, because you were never really separate from your destination. Here, now, in this reading, in this breathing, in this being, you are already home.